लगाओ।
Hi everybody. I'm Jess. I'm going to be co-hosting this workshop for Shin today. You are in Fix Your Retention Flows by Limited Supply. Um, yeah, so welcome everybody. Today's session again is Fix Your Retention Flows. It's a fast and practical workshop focused on improving retention and boosting LTV. So over the next hour, we'll help you identify gaps in your welcome, your post-purchase, and your win-back flows. We will also help you understand the retention metrics that actually move the needle. Walk away with 5 retention fixes that you can implement immediately. Build a simple framework for your next 3 high-impact moves. And some of you are also getting audited live during the session, so please be ready. Um, Without further ado, I want you guys to meet Toby Chapman of Everboost UK. Toby helps DTC brands optimize email and SMS flows. Actually, he does the entire retention flow. So, um, you'll see during the session that Toby really goes all the way throughout your retention. And basically, the goal is to improve post-purchase experiences and boost LTV. He'll be leading our live audits today, sharing practical tips, and showing how small tweaks can deliver big results. So, yeah. Hi, Toby. Can you do an intro for us?
Of
Share a little
course.
bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. I think you did pretty well there in terms of who I am and what I do. So yeah, Toby Chapman, founder of Everboost, which is a retention marketing partner for D2C brands. Like Jess said, we cover the entire retention sort of engine, let's say. Email and SMS are layers within that. And ultimately, our goal with any brand that we work with is to try and get their customers to buy quicker, bigger, and more often. So drive more profit for the brand so they can fuel top of funnel spend.
Thank you so much, Toby. Um, yeah, now that we know a little bit more about you, can you give us an overview of the modern retention funnel? Like what do you think it's gonna look like in 2026?
Yeah, I think that before we even get into what that funnel is going to look like, we need to all be clear on what retention actually is. So often when I speak to brands, they think retention is email, sending some emails, setting up some flows, sending some campaigns. It's the revenue that's showing in the dashboard of Klaviyo. Like I said, email is just an executional tool to achieve retention. So really retention is the discipline. It's all about fueling cash flow, fueling profit, and ultimately fueling top of funnel spend. So we like to imagine retention as a car engine. So you put fuel in the form of new customers, it spends it around, it spits out profit, and you can move further forwards with your brand. So just remember, email is only a channel and it's an executional layer. So continuing with that model around a car engine and how we see the modern retention funnel. So in its simplest form, from an email perspective, we've got 2 broad categories when it comes to flows, at least: pre-purchase and post-purchase. So pre-purchase, anything focused on progressing a customer further through the funnel to their first purchase. Now, this can be welcome flows, abandonment flows, site abandonment, browsement, anything like that. Now, this is typically where we see brands spend a lot of their focus, and rightfully so. They're trying to acquire new customers. But the second category, which is often the most neglected and is partly what we'll be covering today, is post-purchase flows. So anything that focuses on taking that new customer, nurturing them, and extracting more value from that customer. Now, this can be in the form of the onboarding flow. This can be returning customer flows, replenishments, win-backs, cross-sells. But like I said, brands often neglect this piece. So before we get into the sorts of things that you can do in post-purchase flows and funnels and the retention funnel as a whole, it's important for me to say that you can't have great retention without a great product. Like, you can't put lipstick on a pig. So a good product is naturally going to lend itself to better retention. So once we've got that out of the way, that's a good thing. Retention then amplifies that. So what I see now in the current funnel and with all the brands that we speak to in terms of how they review retention, like I said, they view it as a channel specific thing. There's too much emphasis on attribution. So attribution, again, is downstream to the customer experience that you build and the profitability that you're trying to drive from the channel. And often with that, again, because founders are so focused on the channel itself, they're optimizing for opens and clicks rather than thinking about how they can use these channels as a way to move towards their wider business goals. Does that all make sense so far? Anyone got any questions? Are we good to continue?
Yeah, definitely. Can we drop like an emoji if everything's so clear? Everything's clear so far, and if you are good to move forward. Awesome. Thank you, Connor.
Nice.
Thank you,
Cool.
Kyle. Okay.
So getting into how I see, the retention funnel in the new year. So like I said, retention is sort of this behavior-driven, cash flow powered engine that is about turning your existing customers and fueling more profit from them. So acquisition pours the fuel in, retention then compresses that into profit, and then the profit then powers more acquisition. So without getting into too much around car engines, that's the sort of fundamental way that it works. So your revenue is not linear, your retention is not linear, and your growth is not linear. It's an engine, there's loads of interconnected parts, and retention is inextricably linked to so many other aspects of the business. Product quality, what you're doing on acquisition, customer quality, etc. So let's start with the first part of this funnel, or the engine. So the acquisition, like I mentioned. A very, very common misconception is that retention, you can have great retention regardless of what you're doing on acquisition. Acquisition just brings in the customers and then it's up to the email team or whatever it is to maximize retention. Ultimately, what you do on acquisition massively impacts what you see in retention. And this is where retention actually begins, before someone's even made the purchase. So all the way from the static ad creators or the UGC or whatever it is that they're seeing and the messaging that's being communicated there, that is where retention starts. So some products could lend themselves to better or worse retention. Some channels could lend themselves to better or worse retention, Google, TikTok, Meta, whatever it is. And like I said, the messaging, ultimately you're setting the expectation in that initial message, and you need to make sure you follow through with your product. Otherwise, if you go too direct response and you make these wild claims, you're probably going to see bad retention because you set the wrong expectation from the start. So that's the first part. Second part is the ignition. So we put the fuel in, we're going to start up the engine now. So this is where the engine sort of turns over for the first time. And this is about making those customers feel confident that they've made the right choice, preparing them to adopt the product, use the product, get maximum value out of whatever they have purchased, regardless of whether it's in fashion and apparel, supplements, skincare. It's all about making sure the product uses the product and gets the expected value out of it. So people don't repeat unless they've either experienced one or any of the following. They've gained confidence, they've experienced value, they feel a positive identity reinforcement, and they've avoided disappointment gaps. If you don't have any of those,
I'm not on the call.
You've missed your shot. It's going to lead to worse retention.
Listening to it.
Sorry, Jess, I don't know if someone's actually got there.
I'm gonna there we go. There we go. I think
cool. Cool. So what affects the stage? What kills the stage? Again, if you set the wrong expectations up front, there's no proof or clarity. It's overly promotional, sales-focused emails versus education and adoption, information overwhelm, and there's no emotional reassurance. So think of retention not as marketing, but behavior design. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And this starts from the very top of the funnel. So third part of this funnel is then adoption. This is what we like to call the sort of outcome realization period. And this is typically within the first 1 to 4 weeks. It could be longer, it could be shorter. It depends on what you are selling. And this is probably the most important stage in the business. That first 30 days of a customer's life cycle is absolutely crucial. And if you mess up that first 30 days, it will make it very hard to recover from a retention perspective. So we've covered that your product quality will do 80% of the work, and that all of your retention systems on the back end is what's going to amplify it. So what this first 30 days needs to focus on is to accelerate the moment that a customer either experiences a result, gains certainty, forms a usage habit, or builds a belief. Does that all make sense so far? Cool. Nice. And by the way, guys, any questions when we're going through, just jump in, chuck them in the chat, and we can stop and look through those. Obviously, there's going to be Q&A at the end, but I want to make sure this is all clear. So in terms of where this can show up, how we can maximize this 7 to 30 day period, instructional content, usage frameworks, founder videos. I know a lot of founders are scared to jump on camera and produce content, but it's so important in today's day and age. So founder videos and content is really important. Again, that sort of leans into the customer building a sort of identity with the brand. They might resonate with you as a founder. And also addressing common misconceptions. So we've established the first 30 days of the life cycle. We're starting to reinforce the behavior. We're starting to get them aligned with the brand. So now how do we get that repeat purchase? So stage 4 is what we call the sort of repurchase and habit loop. So they've adopted the product and now it's putting them into that sort of natural repeat purchase cycle. And the goal of this, create that predictable repurchase rhythm, introduce replenishment or seasonality, and encourage that sort of natural next step. So this stage looks very, very different depending on the vertical you're in. Obviously, we've got brands from all different verticals in this call now, so I can't be too specific, but I'll just sort of give some general examples. So any kind of replenishable good, let's say supplements, skincare, cosmetics, this phase is all about using replenishment as that sort of LTV engine, getting that customer to come back more often. That is the form of value that you are trying to extract here, generate more profit from that customer in the form of extra repeat orders. For apparel, this is where, again, the habit is in the form of sort of style identity rather than usage. Everyone knows how to wear clothes. So the repeat sort of comes through those seasonal refreshes, making sure they're confident with the fit, they can cover any closet gaps. So it's not so around using the product, but more expanding the collection. And anything like home goods, let's say, mattresses, whatever it is, furniture, any kind of low frequency product tends to be higher AOV. The repurchase may not happen. And if it does happen, it's probably going to be over a much longer time horizon. So the value that we define here in the form of what you do from a retention perspective often comes through other formats that aren't an extra purchase. So this can be reviews, referrals, UGC, gifting, whatever it is. This is often the form of value that you need to optimize for. So always start with, what is my vertical? What do we sell? What does value look like to us as a business in terms of lifetime value? Obviously, for most lifetime value is lifetime revenue, but again, it's different. Now we go into stage 5, which is expansion. So this is where we want to try and increase the customer value without just relying on discounts. So the ways that we do this, again, growing that LTV profitably, cross-sells, upsells, bundles, subscriptions where relevant. Some of you brands will have subscriptions, community loops, and so on. So again, people buy again when they're confident, they feel aligned with the brand. And there's a very clear next step. That next step could be, okay, they've lost weight, now it's gain muscle. They've cleared their acne, now they've got dry skin and they need to moisturize, whatever it is. You needs to be some kind of clear next step. And then ultimately, this comes to the final part of the engine, which is the profit output. So this is where the engine, the car engine, releases its power. So it's going to produce predictable, profitable cash flow. It's going to shorten your payback period, ultimately lend itself to higher LTV, which again makes scaling and funding acquisition much, much easier. So do you guys start to see now how retention isn't just email flows and email campaigns and staying in touch with your audience? It's ultimately the thing that makes running your business much more sustainable and much more predictable. Has anyone got any questions? No, we're all good.
We do have a couple of questions. Do you want to answer them now or like wait till later?
I mean, it depends how big they are. Let's chuck a couple of questions at me. If they're
Okay,
long
cool.
ones, we'll answer at the end. So we've got time for the live flow of it.
All right. So Annette Furio is asking for you to repeat those 4. Annette, could you clarify which 4 you wanted Toby to repeat?
Hey, I actually forget. They were right when you were talking about how the first 30 days were the most important, and then you rattled off a few like key points, but it was just like a quick list of four. I don't know if you still have that, but no worries if not. This is great.
No, of course. So we've got number one would be experience some form of result. Number two would be to gain certainty. Number three is form some sort of usage habit. And then number four is to build belief. You can have one or all of those.
Thank you.
No worries.
Awesome. Thank you. One more. Is 30 days fixed irrespective of the business model? Rochelle is asking.
There's obviously always going to be some sort of give and some context that you've got to factor in depending on your business. For most, we find it's 30 days. But again, if you think about staying with that mattress example, a mattress company example, it's probably going to be extended 60, 90, whatever it is. But ultimately, that first initial experience with the brand after they've placed an order is very important, because I'm sure, like me, a lot of you guys have purchased something online. You thought, oh, should I have spent my money on that, or should I have gone with that brand? You start to have this sort of not resentment, but doubt. And when that starts creeping in, you don't address it. That's what affects that first 30 days. And it will ultimately lead, or potentially lead, to a worse retention when that customer maybe doesn't feel like they've made the right decision. Alicia's just chat something. If the product nature is not meant to be replenished, e.g. jewelry, how to drive retention without deep discount if cross-sell / upsell doesn't work? So I guess it depends on what type of jewelry you're selling, right? So let's take, for example, a wedding ring. Hopefully someone only has to purchase one wedding ring in their lifetime. So in that case, it's going to be difficult to get a replenishment. So this is where we have to start to think, what does value to us look like? So obviously we're all aware customer acquisition costs are continuing to rise, CPMs continue to rise. So can we maybe counteract that in your case, in the case of, let's say, the wedding ring? Can we use referrals or UGC or something where we can leverage that to bring in customers at a lower cost? These are the sorts of things that we need to consider. But obviously, if you've got a low replenishment category product, your acquisition strategy, again, this is why I said they're so linked, you need to build your acquisition strategy around that. If you're not profitable on first order, it's going to be very hard to make that up in that category. So you need to make sure that the two are aligned and everyone across the company is on the same page. Cool. Jess, should we move on to the live audits?
Yes, definitely. We can answer a few more questions after the live audit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
absolutely. Cool. So guys, obviously got access to a couple of accounts. We're going to go through and look at some of their flows. Because of the nature of call, we won't show data. So I'm going to have to bounce around between certain tabs to try and hide certain things. So Jess, whilst I'm doing this and just getting up a few of the things to share my page, if there is any other quick fire questions that I can do on the fly, then let me know.
Cool. If the product how do we use AI to increase retention?
Ooh.
From Daniel.
I don't know if that's a quick fire question. There's a lot to.
It's not.
Lot to dig into
Okay.
We can save that one for the end, definitely.
Definitely. All right. Well,
so let me.
Yeah.
I've got a few flows up here, so I will share this with you guys. We'll start with the welcome flow for this brand here. Just to confirm, with content of the emails, the brand's happy for us to share the content, as long as we don't show data.
Yeah, as long as we're not showing numbers.
Fine. Okay. That's all good, because we'll do a couple of sort of walkthroughs of the creative and the general strategy within the creative itself. So let's start with the welcome flow. Now, with the brands that we've got access to, guys, the two that we're going to run through, they are both in lower replenishment categories. So I'll try and sort of give advice that's applicable to a lot of brands. Let's just get this one up here. Okay, Jess, you may have to give me access to share the screen. I'll answer some questions whilst you're there. Well, shit, let's do the AI question to increase retention. So the main use cases that I see from an AI perspective, number one would be if you have a large catalog. So again, let's take like a supplement brand. You've got loads of different supplements, or loads of, maybe even a skincare brand, you've got serums, moisturizers, whatever it is. Ultimately, each of those products will have different consumption habits and usage cycles. So replenishment flows, cross-sell flows, upsell flows. If we have the same, let's say, time delays or content for each of those flows, it's probably going to fall flat. So one big use case of AI, and there's tools that help with this, for example, Relo, they can comb through your catalog, look at the average time between orders per SKU, and then the trigger is based on what that person last ordered, and it will send a more timely, more relevant email based on that historical data. Other ways that AI can be used to increase retention. This one, I suppose, is less of a use case, but content in terms of producing emails. AI, there are some AI email builders. They're okay if you're happy with basic design, but if content is a bottleneck in terms of getting campaigns out, use an AI tool to have a higher frequency of campaigns, because ultimately one of the unspoken benefits of email, of text, direct mail, whatever it is the top of mind awareness. The more emails that you send, the more you're going to stay in that person's mind, the more likely they're going to come back. So those are two quick ways, but again, we can probably dive into that later. So Jess, I've just seen this come through. Let me make sure I accept this. Cool. Right. Here we go. Jess, can you just confirm that you can see this?
Yep, I can see it.
Cool. Okay, guys. So this flow here is for a fashion and apparel brand. They are in the women's space. So they sell women's clothing. Now, if we think high level, what the welcome flow is, it's the first kind of touch point with the brand. Obviously, they've seen an ad, or they come from elsewhere organically. The welcome flow, if we start with the common mistakes that I see, brands really overcomplicate this and try and focus on themselves. We're amazing, this is our story, and there's space for that. But ultimately, this flow is trying to get that first conversion, get them through the door, because you've paid to get them to your website. So that's what the focus should be on, is getting that first conversion. So immediately what I see within this flow is the use of this split here. So has placed order 0 times overall time. In the case that it's yes, they go down the standard flow. In the case that it's no, they get this fallback email here. Now, typically with a welcome flow, we only want people that have never placed an order going through. If someone is coming through the flow and they've already placed an order, or let's say they've placed an order and they haven't signed up to email before that, they're then going to get this email as their post-purchase email, as well as the post-purchase flow. So it might confuse the journey a little bit. So I would just have a flow filter at the trigger level to say placed order equals 0 overall time, rather than this conditional split. Now, again, when we look down the flow, we can see it's a singular straight path. There's not much going on in terms of conditional splits. Obviously, we've got this one here and this one here, but they're not really used from a personalization perspective. So a lot of you guys may have heard of zero-party data. A lot of you may have heard that you need to collect it. A lot of you may even collect it in your pop-ups. But again, something we see is brands collect it, but they don't use it. They don't use it within their content to personalize. They don't use it to analyze the data and understand who are their best performing cohorts. So in the case that this is a woman's apparel brand, I'd maybe want to collect data on, are they shopping for themselves or someone else? What do they look for in clothing? Is it style? Is it fit? Is it, something else? All of the above. And then we would want to use that data within the flow to personalize it. Now, in this case, because I'm only an analyst account, I can't make any changes. But what we'd want to do is we'd use this conditional split block down in the bottom left. And immediately within the flow, we'd have a conditional split based on someone's profile property. So let's say in the case that it was style was most important to them, we then want to send them an email relevant to style. So why are our clothes better than others, or whatever it is, and show lots of imagery of women showing off the clothing very nicely. So that would be a big one for me. And this can apply to any vertical. If it's supplements, again, for sake of ease of this conversation, fat loss, muscle gain, performance. We can then show them products relevant to those. We can show them testimonials relevant to those, content relevant to those, whatever it is. Ultimately, showing more relevant content is going to increase relevance, as it says on the tin, which lends itself to increased conversions. When we get more people converting, obviously this is good from a CAC perspective, because we're getting more people convert off the same ad spend, but also we're filling your email list with more buyers. And what we see, again, across a lot of accounts, is going to be fluctuation to this, 70, 80, sometimes 90% of revenue that is generated from campaigns comes from existing customers. So if we are now getting more customers because we're converting more through the welcome flow, we've now increased our earning potential, our earning pool from future campaigns. Does that all make sense so far? Cool. Let's continue.
I think Joseph has a question.
Absolutely.
He's asking, when do we ask the question on what they value? If it's style, performance, and so on, so we can put them in the proper flows.
Good question. So best place to collect it is in the pop-up form, or if you have a quiz on the website. So again, let's take the example of a supplement brand. They can have a quiz based on someone's goals, but the pop-up and the quiz are the best places to do it. Now, you can do this natively within Klaviyo pop-ups. And again, the quiz platform, it can be something like Octane, it could be Digio, whatever it is. So those would be the best places to do it. And you assign those profile properties to that specific person in Klaviyo.
We got one more question from Anat. Do you risk over segmenting at such an early stage?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. So what you want to initially do within the pop-up form, add in those options to collect that data. Don't use it straight away. If you're collecting that data first time, you don't have to set up this personalized flow straight away, but just start to look at how many people are answering specific options. Because you may find if you have 4 options within that pop-up form, 80% of them go through option 1. So in that case, you say, okay, let's create a personalized power filter for option 1. For the other options, yes, it's probably nice to have to get those in place, but if you're limited on resources, then just start with the one that's getting most of the most of the answers. But we tend to find that there is a good split between the options, and you should try and match them to, again, what you know about your audience, rather than choosing something random that no one's going to answer. But once you create these personalized paths in the welcome flow, you do not need to personalize every single email in the flow. Let's say you had 4 or 5 emails in the flow. You probably only want to personalize the first and second email, but start with just the first. Most of your conversions will happen on the first email. So in that email, you give them the offer or whatever it is that they signed up for. You show some personalization, you leave it there. The follow-up email, again, you could do a more personalized email if you have the bandwidth. And then maybe email 3, 4, 5, they can just be more generic ones. And the reason why I say this, again, in the accounts that we see, 90, sometimes lower, 80, 85% of conversions will happen on day 0 within the first 24 hours. So when we see brands with welcome flows that span a month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is, you look at the emails towards the end of it and they're just not doing anything. That person will fall into your campaigns if they don't convert at the end of the first week, and they may convert from there. Does that make sense? Cool. So going back up to the flow itself up here. Now, what I'll say is we're missing some key profile filters. So if someone enters this flow, as we can see, there's some filters here. They are not in the website pop-up, or they're not added through Shopify. So I imagine in this case, I don't have context here, but these are forms for different purposes. But let's say someone signs up through the form, they enter this welcome flow. They receive this first email, they place an order. Based on the flow filters that we have set up right now, they are going to stay within this flow. So they are going to continue receiving emails welcoming to them to the brand and trying to get them to convert. as well as receiving the post-purchase emails. So now they're receiving 2 flows at the same time, which obviously from a user experience perspective isn't good. It's going to cause confusion. It may spike unsubscribes and spam complaints. You may see an increase in customer support tickets when one email is sending to the customer saying, you know, are you ready to buy, sort of thing? And then they're getting another email saying, thank you for your order. It's going to cause a lot of confusion. So we need to have that in place. Other profile filters would be, have they started checkout at all since entering this flow? Again, it's a different intent. So we've got signing up. That's one form of intent. It's not a low intent, but it's not, you know, they're not exactly close to purchasing, so to speak. And then if they start checkout and abandon, that's high intent. They are, you know, 1-2 clicks away from placing an order. So if they start checkout, we want to put them into the abandoned checkout flow. We can remove them from this flow, again, just to protect that user experience. You can make the argument to do that for have they added to cart since starting this flow as well, if you've got that abandoned cart flow. When it comes to viewing a product, we tend not to have that in the profile filter of this flow because it's low intent. If someone's only viewed a product, we probably don't want to put them in the browser abandonment flow. Most brands don't have the browser abandonment flow properly set up anyways. It's very basic. So again, we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot if we remove them from the welcome flow that's more content rich and, you know, generally a better performing flow to put them in a browser abandonment flow that isn't quite there. Does that make sense?
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
Are you open to like answer a few questions?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Do you need different welcome emails? For example, customers who is shopping for uppers, lowers, etc.
Customers that are shopping for who, sorry?
Uppers and lowers. Can we clarify if this is like, do you mean like tops and bottoms? Yes. Okay. Yeah, he means tops and bottoms.
If you see that there's a use case to do that, like they're a very different type of customer, then potentially, or if you have a hero product, maybe that's, you know, let's say it is the trousers, then maybe. But at the end of the day, most people buy from a brand because they want to achieve something personally. Like humans are selfish at the end of the day, right? They've got goals, they've got pain, but whatever it is. So most people probably don't come to the website and say, you know, yes, they might be looking for trousers, but why are they looking for trousers? Is it because their current trousers are baggy and they don't fit, or, you know, they've lost weight and now they need some, you know, nicer trousers to match, you know, how they are now? Like that's what we want to focus on, because ultimately that's what's going to get them to convert.
Definitely. Do you recommend asking for preferences in the first or primary website pop-up collecting leads, or just email and name, possibly SMS?
Good question. So again, there's mixed opinions on this in terms of what to collect in the pop-up form. We like to make it as frictionless as possible. So the first step of the form, we tend to have as that data collection. And the reason why we have it as the first step, might seem counterintuitive, is because people think by giving this answer, it's going to give them something more relevant. And in the case that in this welcome flow, if we set it up correctly, it will. So we start the question. Then once they've given us that data, collect the email. Do not collect SMS on the same step. We tend to find that hurts sign up rates. If you are going to collect SMS, try and have it on a separate step, because it's a much more intimate channel. People are less willing to give data or their phone number because they don't want to be bombarded with texts. So don't worry about collecting name. It does very little in the way of increasing conversions compared to talking to someone's pain points or goals or motivations. You'll get their name at checkout anyways if they place an order. So that tends to be the way that we go. Cool.
Okay,
Jess, there's one more. Okay.
But if I do one more. Okay,
Yeah,
where are these conditions placed? Okay, if someone enters the checkout abandonment, when do we add that trigger? This is from Joseph Mara.
In terms of the profile filters?
Um,
No, you just mentioned that earlier, that like once they enter like further down the funnel, we should trigger it at a certain point. So I just want a clarification on when they're entering a different, I guess, conditional split.
So in terms of if they've started checkout, all of that will do, if I'm understanding correctly, all of that will be done in the profile filter level. We don't have to do that as a conditional split within the flow. If you're referring to, is that what you're on about?
Yeah, so you're saying this is separate from the welcome flow. That we obviously have a browse abandonment flow. They'll enter that separately once they trigger that.
Correct, yeah, but we tend not to send that to people in the welcome flow. So within the browse abandonment flow, we can have a profile filter up here where it can say something like has not been created in the last 5 or 7 days, depending on whatever your welcome flow is.
Got it, thanks.
No worries. Cool. So, little tidbit for you guys here. This applies to all key lifecycle flows in the account. So something we like to do is take this profile property update here. We would drag it to the top of the flow when they enter that flow, and we would create a profile property like exclude is true. So we use a Boolean value. The reason why we do this is if someone enters the welcome flow, again, they're at a certain point in their customer journey that we need to make sure that the content and the messaging aligns to that. So by using this profile property, we can create a segment in Klaviyo for anyone that has exclude is true. And we can exclude sending campaigns to them because we don't want to dilute the messaging and cause confusion and overwhelm when they're already passing through a flow. Now, you're probably wondering, well, yes, they get assigned this profile property up here, but what if they get to welcome email 2 and they purchase and they leave the flow? So we can have a fallback flow. I can't set it up now, unfortunately, in this account, but when someone is added to that exclusion segment, we can wait 10 days, and this is set up as a flow. If they haven't received an email in the last 5, we then remove that profile property. That way we avoid people entering that segment and never leaving. And then at the end of the flow, if they do pass all the way through, we can just have another profile property update here to say update exclude to false. Does that make sense? Because I know that's a little bit more technical. I don't want people to be confused by that.
Definitely makes sense.
Cool. Okay, Jess, I'm going to quickly stop sharing the screen again to get up some things to avoid sharing the data, and then I'll share back again. So let's get some of these emails up here. So this is, when I share my screen, this is a good example. Let's get these up. Also, get this one here. Wary of time as well, so we're going to have to fly through these, but that's fine. Yes, again, if there's any questions whilst I'm doing this, feel free to
cool.
to list them off.
What is not in website pop-up? Wouldn't they have completed the pop-up already if they got on the welcome flow list?
Yeah, so the pop-up will only be for existing visitors, new visitors. Basically, if you haven't collected the data before they enter the flow, you're going to have no way of personalizing it unless you ask for that data within the flow, but that tends to not be the best thing to do. So yeah, that's why we asked to collect it in the pop-up form, because they won't be in the welcome flow at that point. If you're on about how do we get this data from existing customers, then it would have to be probably a campaign send, or you'd have a separate flow set up where, again, you encourage people to click through and it goes to maybe a type form or a survey that you've got embedded on your website.
Okay, Dana said that she was asking about the filter on the screen before.
I'm a little bit lost. I've forgotten what I said, to be honest.
Okay, there was a filter that said, yeah,
gotcha.
It's not in a website pop-up.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, obviously I've only got view access. I'm not too familiar with this account. This isn't one that we manage, so I'm not too sure about that filter. Like I said, it might be a different pop-up that they've got for a different reason. Let's say they've got a pop-up for new visitors, which is the welcome offer, and maybe a pop-up for, to collect SMS for existing customers. It could be that. So I'm unsure, but yes, you shouldn't have a filter in place that stops new signups entering the welcome flow. Those are the people that you want passing through. Cool. So let's quickly share this. So before we get into the browser environment, let's just move some things around here. I want to show you guys this welcome email here. So if we just look from a design perspective, again, some minor things here. So first thing is the customer has signed up for 15% off. Great. But we're not giving them that code and making that code obvious until halfway down the email. We probably want to be using the digital real estate at the top here in what we call the above the fold section to let them know that, hey, this is your code. Here's a CTA maybe here to click through and place your order. Otherwise, we're forcing the user to scroll down and find the code, which is not the best experience. Now, when we get to the bottom of this email, nice, we've got some product recommendations. Cool. We're collecting data here. And again, there's nothing wrong with collecting data, but at this point in the customer journey, it doesn't make sense to do this. We should either collect this data in the pop-up before they've gone through the flow, or maybe a post-purchase flow. The main goal of this flow is to get the conversion. We don't want to be asking them to place an order and change their preferences. There's too much going on. So we want to simplify. So that was a little bit that I noticed there. Now, if we go into the browser abandonment flow, what I'll say here will apply to most abandonment flows. As we can see, it's a straight path, which, again, nothing terrible with that. It might be fine when you're at a smaller scale, but as you continue to scale, as you generate more new customers and you get more returning customers come back, this is where this starts to get exposed. So someone that's never placed an order from you before, they have a lot more fears, uncertainties, doubts, objections. They don't trust the brand. And that needs to be reflected in the content in the form of social proof, offers, it could be FAQs, it could be a founder video, whatever it is. Someone that's already placed an order from you, they know the brand, they trust the brand, they have an affinity. We don't really need to dive as deep into that sort of objection handling content. We should be focused more on, here's why you should place another order. Here's how that benefits you. So we need to match the messaging to the lifecycle stage. And again, we can do that with a conditional split. So in this case, we'd have a conditional split. We'd want to put it up here. And we'd say placed order equals 0 overall time. The yes path would obviously be prospects. The no path would be customers. So that's the first way that we'd personalize this. The next way, or the next reason, why we would split like that is in the case that we have an offer in this flow. Let's say it's 15% off on the welcome flow. We would want to reinforce that offer for prospects, remind them that this offer exists. If we don't have that split, now existing customers are going to be getting that same offer again. And we're all of a sudden, we're eroding margin at that point. And this is why we need to look at these channels as a way to build profitability. If we're giving 15% off to someone that's already ordered, chances are they will order again, provided that they've seen value or, the 4 reasons that I listed off earlier. They will buy again if they've seen one of those without a discount. So we want to avoid eroding margin. The next way that I probably want to level up this flow, so to speak, is if you have a hero product, or if you have 1, 2, or 3 products that get a lot of traffic and they're very different from each other, I probably want to have a conditional split based on the product that they viewed. Again, if we go back to like a supplement example, if it's a fat loss product, let's focus on that. If it's a muscle gain product, let's focus on that. Performance, let's focus on that. Obviously, in the case that you have loads of products, a massive catalog, that's not very feasible. So that's why you want to focus on those products that drive the most volume. In the case that it's this fashion apparel brand, maybe, and again I'll have to check, but you might want like a viewed category flow instead. So if they view trousers, they get trouser specific content. Tops, they get top specific content. So that would be another way that I'd want to see some personalization there. Now, when we go into the profile filters, this here is better set up. So as you can see, added to cart 0 times since starting the flow. We want that in place. Again, if they have viewed a product, they get the email from us, they go back onto the page and add to their cart. We don't want to carry on sending them emails around, do you want to go back and visit that product? So it's great that we got that. Has not been in flow in the last 15 days. That's also something we want. That time frame might differ for you. Generally, it's 14 to 30 days. For most, it depends on how aggressive you want to be. So if it's a very high consideration, like a long consideration period product, you may want that time frame to be much longer. If it's more of an impulse buy, you may want that time frame to be shorter. Placed order 0 times, so that's great. That's what we'd want to see in the welcome flow. Checkout started 0 times, also great. And then again, in this case, this is great to see. So subscribe to list 0 times in the last 3 days. That may have to be expanded the 3 days to 5 or however long your welcome flow is. But that is something that we'd also want to see. Any questions on that, guys?
Alicia has asked if it's crucial to avoid new users to receive cart or browse abandonment before they complete the welcome flow.
Depends on the setup. I know it's probably not the answer that you want. If your welcome flow is very short, then no, it's not as crucial. But if your welcome flow is much longer, more aggressive, let's say you've got an email every day for a week, then potentially. But it's not crucial. It's not the end of the world. But if we really want to optimize the customer experience, we want to control what sort of content they're getting at which point of their life cycle.
All right, so Joseph has another question. Looking at the key flows, what are the most important for smaller brands under $3 million? Is it ADC, abandoned checkout, browse abandonment, etc.?
Exactly that. So for brands that are sub 7 figures or just breaking into 7 figures, welcome flow, abandoned checkout, browse abandonment, and a good post-purchase flow for new customers. There's more that you can do, but if we think about the things that are really essential, it's going to come down to those 4 things. Obviously, have a strong pop-up in place that's growing your list over time. If you've got the bandwidth to add in more flows, replenishments, cross-sells, win-backs, by all means do it. Maybe you don't have to go to an extreme level of personalization within those flows. You may just want a 1 or 2 email flow. But yeah, don't over-index on retention if you are still struggling to acquire new customers, because you're retaining not a lot at that point, if that makes sense.
Awesome, thank you. We can move forward.
Cool. So let's take a look at the order fulfilled flow. So this may be called differently. Your account, in this case, it's order fulfilled. What we tend to call this flow, where we use the fulfilled order trigger, is like a new customer onboarding. So if we look at the SaaS industry, onboarding to them is crucial. They spend so much time refining their onboarding experience and making sure that users use the product and stay on. E-commerce brands tend to neglect it when we should probably learn from SaaS and take some notes out of their book. So if we start with the goals of a new customer onboarding flow, what are the key things that we're trying to achieve? If we go back to, again, what a retention engine is, we're trying to make sure that they adopt the product, they use it correctly, they experience maximum results, and they feel good with their purchase. And then another one within this flow will be maximize the amount of traffic that you drive back to the website. And that doesn't have to be in the form of, hey, buy this product. It can be, hey, check out this, guide on how to care for or wash your clothes correctly, whatever it is, something that is of value to that customer. Once they are on the website at that point, they're much more likely to think, oh, I'm on the website, let's have a look around, let's have a nosy, and they potentially buy something else. So those are the goals of the flow. Now, what we see brands typically do with this flow is it's very transactional, surface level, almost like they don't care about the customer. It's thanks for your order. Cool, here's your tracking details. Maybe they get an order when it arrives, your order's here, cool. And they'll say, your order's here, hope it's great. Oh, by the way, here's some other products that you can buy. And then maybe they'll send an email in a week or two, join our socials or whatever it is. It's not going to do a lot. So with this flow here, again, this depends on the scale that you're at. Your post-purchase flow, you should, if you're going to place a lot of emphasis on a flow, post-purchase will be one of them, especially for new customers. So how can we make this a little bit richer? How can we personalize this a little bit more? So what we see works particularly well in the health vertical is people will have different health goals. Again, it could be weight loss. Just stick with that example. So if we know that someone came through the pop-up and said their goal is fat loss, or if we know that someone came through a specific ad creative where we're pushing weight loss and they haven't come through the pop-up, chances are we want to reinforce that messaging in the post-purchase. So give them tips on weight loss, show them other products for weight loss, talk about the timeline that's expected for weight loss. So again, we set the right expectations. So we can layer in conditional splits within this flow based on that person's goals, pain points, whatever it is, and provide that message continuity from top of funnel through to post-purchase. And now all of a sudden they see us as, oh, this brand, they know me. They're sending me this content about what I want to achieve. Like, I've got to buy more from this brand. So that's how I improve any post-purchase flow, is don't just make it one size fits all, tailor it to that customer. Now, if you don't have that data available, other ways that you can do this, if customers buy specific products that have different outcomes or benefits, we can send a post-purchase flow based on that product. Now, something I see very commonly, it's actually in the other account that we've got access to. I know we're coming up on time here, so we might have to really quickly fly through that other account. Is if you've got loads of products, or let's say you've got 5 to 10 products, is making a specific flow for each of those products, and the flow filters are off. So let's say someone buys 3 of those 10 products, and you've got a different flow for each of them. They're now going to pass through all 3 of those flows, potentially get 3 emails at the same time every day, or whatever your cadence is, and it's not the best user experience. So you can use show hide logic within Klaviyo. So if someone purchased this product, and this is within the email itself, again, I can't click on this to avoid showing the data, but within the email itself, we can have image slices or text box, and we can dynamically show those based on the product they've ordered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So let's take a quick look at the flow filters here. So again, this is great. Refunded order 0 times since starting this flow. Something that we like to have as a flow filter with any new customer onboarding is, have they cancelled order 0 times since starting, and have they refunded order 0 times since starting? Because again, you may find that someone places an order and immediately cancels or refunds because they made a mistake. In the case of fashion apparel, an app that I would recommend to mitigate that is order editing. But yeah, that is definitely one that we want to look for here. Now, this filter has not been in the flow at any time. Again, I don't know the context of when this flow was set up and what have you, but if we want to have it only to new customers, we would obviously want to have the filter as placed order equals 1 overall time. And we would have a separate returning customer flow for that audience. Does that make sense?
Yep, definitely.
Cool. So just quickly looking at some of the content in these emails. Now, what I'll say with fashion and apparel, again, this is great because you're giving context on how, as it says here, how to feel amazing in any of your products. But with fashion and apparel, it's very visual. Someone doesn't know that they're going to look and feel amazing unless they probably see someone else doing it. So I probably want to turn this text and have some kind of paired visual with it, so they can see visually how other people are doing it. And then again, that's when they start to see themselves wearing it like that. So that's just a quick minor point there. And in terms of this plain text email here, this is the second email within this flow. And we're talking to them about returns and exchanges. Again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with talking about returns and exchanges, but this early on in the flow, they've only received 1 email at this point, might be too soon. So we may want to send that slightly later on, focus on front loading a bit more content in that first week to 2, on really making sure that actually they don't need to return or exchange because they're wearing it correctly or whatever it is. So I'd maybe delay this slightly later on. Cool. Jess, I know we're up on time here. Sorry, I blabber on because I really enjoy this stuff. So do we have time to quickly fly through some of the other account? You're on mute.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, if it's okay, we can do at least 5 minutes.
Okay. Again, whilst I'm getting this up, feel free to, I'm just going to stop sharing again, get up a
Okay,
few of
cool.
the flows.
Here, something that we can probably answer on the fly. What are your recommendations for pop-up timing for lead generation? Do you also reference average session duration for new visitors?
So what we actually find is most accounts, the shorter the timing on the form, the higher the submission rate. Again, there needs to be a lot of nuance to this. So brands that are, again, in a higher, longer consideration period, or use a higher ticket, you probably don't want to disrupt the customer experience too early. But test it is what I'll say. Again, it seems very basic for me to say that, but you may find that it's really long, you may find it's really short. What we see in the data is anywhere from 1 to 5 seconds tends to be good. And if you have a teaser for the people that close it after, you're going to capture those anyways.
Thank you. Any learnings on matching email acquisition creative to the ad creative to improve lead CVR? Same question for retention creative and improvements to repurchases. For example, if they go to cite from a Tom Brady ad and we show them Tom Brady in the acquisition and retention emails.
It's what I'll say is it definitely requires a lot of coordination. It's definitely a more advanced thing. So don't try and do it too soon. But in terms of learnings, I think you mentioned lead conversion rate. What I would say is before you try and tailor the welcome flow and things to the ad that they've come through on, do it just based on zero-party data. Maybe if you want to layer in that sort of stuff later on, but again, it's a much more advanced strategy that the resourcing is obviously much more. So stick with the zero-party data for the welcome flow. Maybe for post-purchase, if you've got the bandwidth, I'd test doing that. Cool. Let me get up some of these here. So this is a good example when I share my screen of potentially people receiving multiple emails. Now, again, don't have loads of context on this brand, but just from what I'm seeing on, I've got available now. So they sell, let's say bedding supplies and sleep-related products. We have this retention flow here. So when they order, in this case, a throw, I imagine that's the category, something from the throws, they're receiving these follow-up emails that are personalized to that product. So as we can see here, when we go into the trigger, item contains, in this case, it's the Cocoon products. We wait 3 days, we then send a specific email. Now, looking at the icons here, there's no email specific filters here. So we're not excluding people that have maybe ordered another product. So when we go into, in this case, the plushies retention flow, we've got that same 3-day time delay. In this case, they've ordered the weighted stuffed animal. And then we send them an email 3 days after delivered shipment. There's a fair few of these flows in this account. Let's say someone orders 3 or 4 of these products. They're going to receive 3 to 4 emails on the same day at the same time, which, well, in this case, you've got smart sending, so that will stop it. But obviously, if someone has ordered 3 to 4 products, we still want to show them relevant content for all 3 to 4, right? So smart sending is going to mean they only receive 1. So this is where I suggest using that show hide logic. So we could just have a trigger as delivered shipment, depending on what you're showing in the email, how much in depth you have to go based on the product. We can have, again, like a general hero section, and then below the fold, if they ordered plushie, show this block. If they ordered the throw, show this block. That might be the better way to do it, just to control that user experience and avoid sort of overload and a disconnect of what they receive in this flow. Cool. So, Jess, again, I'm aware that we're very far into this and over time. So let's use this as sort of a quick fire thing. And guys, by the way, any questions that aren't answered or anything that you want to go through in more depth, just message me after. as you can see, I like talking about this. So if I didn't cover anything within the flows that you wanted to see, drop me a message. But yeah, there's a lot to cover in this time.
Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Let's go back to one of our questions earlier. How do we use AI to increase retention?
Yeah, so obviously first two that I mentioned, the AI sort of predictive timers for replenishments and cross sells, AI for creative is another big one. Outside of that, there's not a ton of, at least from what I've seen so far, major use cases that increase retention. It's not directly done through Klaviyo or a tool, so to speak, but use AI for large set data analysis. If you've got a load of products and you're not necessarily using a tool to surface LTV by product or LTV by channel or whatever, maybe use AI to sort of comb through this data and do certain calculations for you. But the main ones, like I said, I see is the AI predictive replenishment features. There are some pop-up apps as well that supposedly use AI to show the format at the correct time. They do this sort of continuous testing. An SMS as well, so a tool like Postscript, they have what they call, I think it's infinity testing. So again, an AI feature that just constantly changes the message, the SMS message, and finds the type of content that works best and continuously optimizes.
Okay, in that same idea, Tyler Hill is asking, any churn prediction AI tools?
Any churn? I mean, again, this is going to sound like I'm plugging it. I'm not. It's just a good tool. It's Relo. I wouldn't necessarily say it's churn prediction, so to speak, but you can sort of jump the gun before they are close to churning based on the AI replenishment. So it looks at that product. What's the average time between orders? I suppose certain subscription platforms, if you do sell a subscription, they can flag when, again, customers mostly churn. You can work backwards from that. But in terms of, saying someone's close to churning, you send an email. From what I'm aware, not right now, I could be wrong, but Relo is or any other tool that is AI predictive will sort of mitigate that.
Okay, one more. If it's okay to ask, definitely. How much is the usual charge for an email marketer for an end-to-end work, copy, strategy, and design?
If you're referring to like a freelancer, massively varies. Obviously, we're an agency, so we hire people in these roles, and I've generally got a good index of what people charge. But if you're getting someone from like Upwork or whatever, it can be very cheap. The quality can be less. If you pay cheap, the quality tends not to be there. So yeah, it depends on exactly what you're looking for. If you're looking for ongoing work, it could be anywhere from maybe $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month. Depends on where you're hiring from, country as well. What's the usual attributed revenue from emails? This is a big topic. So attributed revenue, without me saying any rude words, it can be lies, let's say. It's not meaningless. Like you want to look at it to identify trends and see how it changes over time. But every platform is going to try and claim attribution on an order, whether it's Klaviyo, whether it's Meta, whether it's Google. They're all going to try and say, hey, we generated this order, because you can then justify, okay, we're paying them this, and they're saying we made this. So you'll hear the benchmark thrown around of you should make 30% of revenue from email. Lacks a ton of context on the business. A mattress brand, they're probably not going to make 30% of revenue from email. A supplement brand, potentially more. Also, you've got to consider the stage of the business. If it's rapidly scaling from a new customer acquisition point, then the percentage will drop, because you're probably going to have more new customers coming in. You'll likely see it drop. If you're sort of stable, you may see it rise. If you're stagnating on new customer acquisition, you'll likely see your attributed revenue spikes for a period of time as you front load a lot of returning customer revenue. And then you'll likely see that sponge dries up and it will start dropping again. So that's why you always need to fuel new customer acquisition. In terms of a fashion brand, Depends on the context of fashion brand. I know I keep on saying it depends. If you're doing a lot of new releases and launches, you'll probably find your attributed revenue is high. But if you've got a pretty stagnant catalog, 15, 20%, again, it depends on how aggressively you're emailing, but try not to look at attributed revenue as your North Star. Try and look at, is our returning customer sales and orders growing over time? And you can identify trends. So when we increase our campaign volume, do we notice in the Shopify backend that returning customers grows with it? You can start to draw correlations like that. So don't get bogged down by attribution, basically. No worries.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so like one last question before we wrap up. After the workshop, what are the next 3 moves every brand should take to improve retention?
Yes. So I've got a little list here that it's going to require a little bit of work, but it's definitely worth it. So what I say, retention is never fixed. It's not sort of random. You've always got to understand why customers behave the way they do when it comes to retention. If you don't understand that, then it's very hard to sort of manipulate or influence retention. So I'm going to give you a few things that's going to surface 2 types of insights: qualitative insights and quantitative insights. So first thing that I want you to do, for any one-time buyer on your email list, provided that they're, have shown some type of engagement and you're not going to hurt your deliverability, send out a survey to your one-time buyers. It can be as simple as a Google form, it can be a type form, whatever it is. And we're going to want to try and understand why you only a one-time buyer. Is it that you didn't like the product? You simply don't need to replenish yet. It was too expensive. The website experience was bad. Customer experience was bad. Until you know that, it's going to be hard to plug those gaps. Because if your customer experience is terrible, no amount of email flows and text will fix that gap. So that's the first thing. Secondly, and again, a lot of founders hate doing this, but it's massive. Pick up the phone and call your best customers. You can create a list of them in Shopify or Klaviyo, your highest value customers. Call them and ask them why they trust you, what problem you solve for them, what outcome they've achieved, what is keeping them buying again, what they wish you did better. And that there is the customer persona that you want to try and acquire more of. Focus your ad creative on that. Focus your content on that. Those are the people that you want to target. Now that you've got those qualitative insights, I then want you to find your quantitative insights. And this can be tricky depending on what tools you've got available to you. But you want to start to look at your core retention metrics. There's loads of metrics that you can track. But if you're going to track any, these are probably the ones that I'd suggest. First is the 30-day repurchase rate. Let's say you acquired 1,000 customers. How many of those 1,000 customers came back within 30 days of their first order? If it's 300, you've got a 30% 30-day repurchase rate. I'm not going to list off benchmarks because there's so many benchmarks depending on the industry. Find your benchmark for your industry and see whether you are under, over, or on. You're then going to want to look at 90-day LTV, your returning customer revenue percentage, your payback period. So how long does it take to generate a profit on that customer after you've acquired them? Some brands, it's in month 0, so as soon as they place their first order. Some brands, it's month 3. Really depends. If you're a bootstrapped brand, you probably want to try and be profitable on first order. Or if you're very confident that you can make it up in the future and you can sustain that loss, 3 months maybe. So those are 4 key metrics. Potentially you want to track repeat customer refund rate. And again, track that. That's probably a very important one if you're in fashion and apparel. So take those metrics, see where you're at, compare it to benchmarks, and identify where those are gaps. So you've got qualitative, quantitative. So you now have 2, again, key areas that you can focus on. If the customer says customer experience is bad, you know what you've got to work on. If your 30-day repurchase rate is bad, why is it bad? So then you need to go through your post-purchase flows. You need to look at what you're doing on acquisition. Are you setting the right expectation? Are we emailing them enough in the first 30 days? Is it because of the replenishment cycle of your product? Is it a 60-day supply? That's going to affect your 30-day supply. And then choose maybe 1 to 2 priority flows to fix based on all of that data there. And make sure any existing flows especially post-purchase onboarding, cover habit building, proof and reassurance, and all of the things that we discussed. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap that up. Otherwise, I'll continue talking.
It's all good. Actually, yeah, let's wrap up. Because Toby gave us like his time, a lot of his time. Toby, can you share a little bit about what you do, what kind of services they can avail from you, and also how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, of course. I won't say too much about it. So, like I said, Everboost is the company. We're a retention partner for D2C brands. Like I said, our focus is to get your customers to buy quicker, bigger, and more often, basically. Depends on the industry. The best place to reach out to me would be LinkedIn. Tell you what, let me quickly grab my LinkedIn now, and I'll just chuck it in the Zoom for you. I also try and put out content, 5 to 7 times a week there, so you'll see what I'm talking about. Best place would be LinkedIn. From my LinkedIn, you can of course get the website from my page. And Zach, I think, did I see Zach? Zach asked, can you repeat those metrics once more? Yeah, so let me quickly pull this back up. So we've got 30-day repurchase rate. We've got 90-day LTV. We've got returning customer revenue as a percentage of total sales. We've got the payback period. And then we've got the refund or return rate. Again, there's loads of metrics that you can track, but those 5 you can get a lot of insights from.
Awesome. Thank you. And for everybody, we will have the recording available after. So yeah, again, thank you, Toby, for your time, and thank you, everybody, for your time.
And sorry, Jess.
Yeah.
One thing to add, obviously, we'll send out that questionnaire to the guys so they can get personalized recommendations and things and the cheat sheets. So yeah, keep an eye out for those.
Also, I think
Toby, thank you, man. Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you. Jess, you moderate a lot better than I do, so thank you for that. I'm terrible at doing this, but yeah, man, it was super valuable. We're gonna have the recording in the next 48 hours, 24, 48 hours, Jess. Beautiful. All right, and that's pretty much it. Thank you, Toby. I wish I could have been here from the start and do the intro, but thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the Slack community. Take care, and yeah, let's go. Thank you, Jess.
Guys,
you're the best.
Go smash Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
All right.
See you later. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.